The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Rock Fantasy. Play their fantasy pick'em for a chance to win 100 times your money in NBA, MLB, NHL, golf, and more. Sign up today using promo code SGPN to get 100% deposit match. We're also brought to you by the premier arbitrage sports betting tool, Avo. Use their tool to bet both sides into lock in a profit. Access their platform for free at arbsverseodds.com. That's ARBSVSODDS.com. Plus, in honor of Masters Week, the Golf Gambling Podcast guys are giving away a tailor-made Spider X putter for free. Enter at sportsgampodcast.com/masters. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. It's currently late Thursday night, roughly 11 p.m. Eastern Time on April 11th. And I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode because it is time to preview the quarterfinals. We've reached the portion of Monte-Carlo where we are going to cover every match on the card. 4 matches should be fun to get into the actual details of the matches in order. We're going to start off with Tsitsipas against Khachanov at around 5 a.m. Eastern Time. Then Rune versus Sinner at around 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Then Djokovic de Minaur at around 8:20 a.m. And then you're looking at Humbert versus Ruud in the final quarterfinal match at around 9:40 a.m. So the times are going to fluctuate. 5 a.m. should be the actual start time unless there's a weather issue. But the point is we're going to cover all 4 of those matches individually, and looking forward to doing that. Now, before we get into any of the actual previews, do want to do what we always do, which is remind everybody, first and foremost, to like and subscribe on YouTube. Also a reminder to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple, if that's how you still are consuming your podcast. Besides that, a reminder to check out the merch store, because we have a lot of great merchandise on the SGPN app, and also the SGPN website if you want to try to buy some merch, not just for the Tennis Gambling Podcast, where we have shirts and mugs. We also do have a lot of other great merchandise for other shows, the NBA show, MLB show, for example, shows that I'm on, WNBA show, we also have merchandise for. Point is, a lot of great shows, 20-plus gambling shows for free, available on the network, and they all have merch. So check out the merch store. And a reminder that since it is Masters Week, the Golf Gambling Podcast guys are giving away a tailor-made Spider X putter. Can't say I know what that looks like, but it sounds fancy. Enter for free at sportsgampodcast.com/masters. You have until the Masters is over to enter the contest. Now it's actually time to get into the recap of the round of 16. Starting off with the actual lock and dog picks. We had a great episode. Simply put, it was long overdue, the sweep, and we finally got it as Ruud ended up beating Hurkacz comfortably in straight sets. We had a -2.5 games at -124. I mentioned the straight sets angle as well at plus money that got there. First set was somewhat competitive, but Ruud ended up winning 6-4 after grabbing a break in the middle stages, and then Hurkacz was absolutely cooked after that. Ruud went up immediately, a double break, and he ended up coasting to a nice, easy second set win. So point is, straight set win for Ruud. He covered the spread for us. As for the dog, we went out on a limb and we backed Tsitsipas because he was in great form after beating Echeverry 6-1, 6-0. And we thought that Zverev, despite being a solid clay player, struggled in the head-to-head against Tsitsipas, and he struggled once again as Tsitsipas looked like he was going to coast as he was up 7-5, 5-0. So at that point, we're basically counting the money. Then we weren't, because Zverev won 5 straight games. Tsitsipas choked away a 5-0 lead in the second set, but props to him. He regained his composure, and he ended up winning the second set in a tiebreak. So I thought after he blew the 5-0 lead, I thought he was screwed, to be honest, but Tsitsipas did manage to regain his composure and got the job done in straight sets. So a bit of a fun sweat there in the Tsitsipas match. Either way, though, point is a nice sweep for us as we ended up winning both the lock and dog picks. As for the other matches to actually break down, Khachanov beat Medvedev. Medvedev had another implosion against the I don't want to say implosion. I should say he had an outburst against the chair umpire again on an out call, or an in and out call. You get the point. Point is, Khachanov did beat Medvedev in straight sets. We did lean to Khachanov in that match. The head-to-head was close, and I still don't trust Medvedev on clay, and Khachanov got the job done. De Minaur did beat up a Papiron, which wasn't exactly a shock, but point is, De Minaur has been looking very sharp. I believe he's officially going to rejoin the top 10 in the ATP rankings the next about a week from now, give or take. Dimitrov ended up having a very, very fun pair of matches because he finished his matchup against Kekmanovic, which he won in straight sets. Then he had an absolute war against Rune, probably the match of the tournament, and I'm going to get into that match in a second. I'll save that for last. Tsitsipas, I mentioned before, won 7-5, 7-6 against Zverev, cashed us the dog price of plus 105. Rune ended up finishing his match the day prior against Nagal, did drop the second set, and then won the third one 6-2. Djokovic did struggle early in that matchup against Musetti as he was down a break, but he regained his nerve, and he eventually got the job done in straight sets. Crowd started booing him again at some point, and he did the orchestra thing. And at that point, you're just giving Djokovic the energy he needs, and Djokovic used that to his advantage, and he ended up dominating from that point forward. Sinner beat Struff again. What else is new? Sinner's an absolute just freight train. Nothing changes there. Ruud beat Hurkacz in straight sets. Pretty straightforward win there. And Humbert did come back from a set down against Sonego. Thought Sonego was alive. He was. The match did go over, but I did lean to Sonego at like plus 175. And that was a pretty good read because he won the first set. And at that point, you kind of hedge out of it, but he struggled after that, and Humbert did win 6-3, 6-1 in the final two sets. Now it's time to get into the actual main match of the Thursday slate, which was the Rune and Dimitrov marathon or war, however you want to look at it, where Rune did win the match 7-6, 3-6, 7-6. The odds live, I'd say the live odds were absolutely just off the entire match, and if you took Rune live, you made an absolute killing. So Rune was doing well early, did win the first set via tiebreak, then he lost the second set. Rune did his typical injury timeout nonsense, which we've seen for many years at this point, and the odds makers assumed that he was dead because Dimitrov was like minus 600 live when they were on serve to start the third set, which was bizarre. Rune was, I think, as high as like 5-1 live, give or take, and Rune won. So once again, the odds makers completely fell asleep or were unfamiliar with Rune's injury timeout, I'd say, head games, and that definitely came back to bite the odds makers in that one. Dimitrov did have 2 match points when he was returning on the 5-6 game for Rune's serve because he did have advantage twice, could not convert, and then eventually got killed in the breaker as Rune took a 4-0 lead immediately and then coasted to a 7-2 win. I'm not sure how much Rune has left in the tank because he had to go to 3 sets against Nagal as well. So he had to play 5 sets yesterday, which is not, or I should say on Thursday, which is not exactly ideal because you're facing off against Sinner in the next matchup, which is probably not the guy you want to face if you just played 5 sets of tennis. So we'll see how he looks stamina-wise. But the point is, you had a couple of competitive matches. Most of them were kind of straightforward. But either way, a good episode for us nonetheless. Now it's time to move on to the actual preview of the quarterfinal matches. But before we get into any of that, though, do want to take a quick word from our sponsor. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the place to play fantasy sports because it is the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. They have great pick'em games. For example, you can pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in their upcoming games. You can win up to 100 times your money in a single night. Pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. And you can also make rivals picks, which pits 2 players against each other. So you can pick which player you think might have more points, for example, in an NBA game. But a reminder that you should also join Underdog Fantasy because they have a lot of very fun markets for tennis. They have, for example, breaks of serve. They have aces. They have a lot of fun tennis options to make matches more interesting, and I recommend you joining the platform in order to take advantage of those opportunities. So sign up today with promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100, as well as an instant pick'em special. Visit underdogfantasy.com or find them on the App Store, and don't forget to register with the promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100, as well as an instant pick'em special. Must be 18 plus and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concern with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org. We're also proud to partner up with Ava, the premier sports betting arbitrage tool. If you're new to arbitrage sports betting, it's pretty simple. Basically betting both sides of a bet at two different sportsbooks to lock in a profit. The Avo tool scans the sportsbooks, looking for discrepancies in the odds, and then they tell you how much money you need to place in order to actually make any expected profit. The tool is super easy to use and lightning fast because speed is a big part of arbitrage sports betting. The best part of Avo is that it's currently free to use without restrictions. That's right, completely free. Get started today at arbsversusodds.com. That's ARBSVSODDS.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished quickly recapping what happened in the round of 16. Now it's time to move on to the actual matches taking place on Friday in the quarterfinals. So we're going to start off in chronological order with the Khachanov and Tsitsipas match. Tsitsipas is a decent favorite, about minus 215. You're looking at the game spread at around minus 3. Khachanov, though, is plus 185, and the game spread is plus 3. Over-under set at 22.5. For set wagering, Khachanov to win a set is minus 165. Tsitsipas to win in straight sets is plus 135. Over 2.5 sets is plus 135. Now, Tsitsipas has owned the head-to-head against Khachanov, as Tsitsipas is currently 7-2 lifetime against Khachanov. They faced off a couple of times last year. To go through those meetings, Tsitsipas beat him in Paris. Khachanov beat him in Miami, and Tsitsipas did beat him in 4 sets in the Australian Open. So no clay matches. They faced off on clay in 2022, and Tsitsipas did win in 3 sets in Rome. Point is, though, Tsitsipas have been in great form, even though the matchup was competitive on the score sheet against Zverev. That could have easily been 7-5, 6-0. He almost bageled Zverev in the second set. Zverev's a good clay player. That's a good showing by Tsitsipas, and he beat Etcheverry 6-1, 6-0. He was killing Desir in the first round. I understand Khachanov has been solid. Did go to 3 sets against Cerundolo. Not exactly an easy path up to this point. Norrie, Cerundolo, and then Medvedev. But the point is, I do think that Tsitsipas is the better clay player. I think he's completely regained his, confidence based on what I've seen so far in this event. And he owns the head-to-head. So simply put, I think that Tsitsipas wins. I think he probably wins in a decent, margin. I'm not saying it's going to be like a blowout, but I could see a 6-4, 6-4 type match here. But I think I'm going to link to Tsitsipas. I just think he's better on clay, and he's better in the head-to-head. Maybe Khachanov can win a set, but I do think Tsitsipas eventually finds a way to get it done. Give me Tsitsipas in the spot. I'll probably take the 1.5 games. You can get 1.5 games at minus 145, which I think is a good deal. So I'll take that instead as my main look for this matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, you have a matchup between Rune and Sinner. Sinner, obviously a massive favorite, to no surprise. Sinner is around minus 720. Rune is around plus 540. Sinner for the game is about minus 5 or minus 4.5. And Rune is around plus 5 or plus 4.5. The over-under set at 20. For set wagering, Sinner in straight sets is around minus 190. Rune to win a set is plus 155. Over 2.5 sets is plus 220. Now, the head-to-head has been very competitive. In fact, Rune has won 2 of the 3 meetings. Rune beat him in Sofia in 2022, beat him in Monte-Carlo, this exact same event last year, as Sinner won the first set 6-1, and then Rune won the next 2 sets 7-5. And they faced off in the ATP finals last year, and Sinner did win in 3. So the point is, Rune did beat him in this exact same environment last year, but it's still a really bad scheduling spot for Rune. I'm not sure if I believe in the injury timeout nonsense that happened in the Dimitrov match, but he still played 5 sets, including a 3-hour marathon against Dimitrov. I think it was about 3.5 hours. So I have serious questions about his overall stamina and durability for this matchup. And we know Sinner's an absolute freight train. Not only is he winning, but he's not dropped a set in 6 straight matches. He's won the first 2 matches here convincingly. Korda's a pretty decent clay player. He beat him 6-1, 6-2. Struff's a decent clay player as well, beat him 6-4, 6-2. I just have no faith in Rune to have any, gas left in the tank. I think that Sinner's going to kill him, just simply put. Now, you could argue maybe Rune finds a way to cover the 5, maybe, if you end up getting Sinner winning 6-4, 6-4, for example. But I can't pick against Sinner. He's lost 1 time this entire year. He's the best player in the world, and he's had a Djokovic-level rise to the number 1 player in the world, not based on the actual rankings right now, but based on public perception. He was very solid a year ago. Now he's unbelievable. There's really no way around it. He has jumped about 2 levels, and now he is, in my opinion, and according to most people, the best player in the world. I'm not picking against him, just simply put. So give me Sinner to get revenge. I think Sinner wins this match comfortably. I think he wins probably in straight sets. If I had to guess a score line, maybe 6-3, 6-2, something like that. But I know Rune's good on clay, but I really just think Sinner has the firepower to make life miserable for him, and I think he'll end up doing that. So I'm going to lean to Sinner to get the job done pretty convincingly in this matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Djokovic taking on de Minaur. So Djokovic is obviously a decent favorite, as Djokovic is around, give or take, a minus 400, minus 420. Book I see is minus 412, so kind of med in the middle. De Minaur is around plus 332. As for the game spread, Djokovic minus 4.5, and de Minaur is plus 4.5. Over-under for games is set at 21. For set wagering, Djokovic in straight sets is minus 125. De Minaur to win a set is minus 105. And the over 2.5 sets is a plus 150. And they faced off earlier this year, faced off in the United Cup earlier, pre-Australian Open, and de Minaur did win that one in straight sets. I believe Djokovic suffered a wrist injury in that matchup against Lehecka right before it, and then de Minaur took advantage of it as he won in straight sets. De Minaur's been good so far in this event, and you could argue he hasn't really played anybody. Beat Wawrinka, who we know is past his prime. Beat Griekspoor, who's a good player, but not exactly known for his clay prowess. And he beat Papiron. Pretty good win there. Papiron was in good form, so that's a good straight set win there. Djokovic, though, did end up beating Safulin, who's really not known for being a good clay player, and he beat Musetti. Didn't look good, though, in that matchup. I think Musetti kind of let him off the hook there in the first set, and I do think that because of that, Djokovic might be a bit more vulnerable than the odds suggest. I'm going to lean de Minaur plus the 4.5. I just think it's a big spread. I think de Minaur actually can win a set in this one. If Djokovic won in straight sets, would I be shocked? No. He's the best player of all time. I would not be shocked. But if you're asking me to judge what I've seen from Djokovic in this event so far, I think he's been good, not great. I think the Musetti match was definitely a good test for him, but I do think you can argue that there were openings available for Musetti to steal a set and maybe grab momentum, and he just couldn't convert. I think de Minaur has the game to potentially capitalize in the areas that Musetti could not, and I do think that the spread is a bit high because of it. I am going to go with the underdog here. I'm going to go with de Minaur plus the 4.5. Do I think he's going to win? No. I think Djokovic probably wins, but I do think that de Minaur can keep this match competitive. Give me de Minaur plus the 4.5 as my main look into this matchup. And moving on to the last matchup, you kind of save the worst match for last because you have Humbert taking on Ruud, which is a solid match on paper because both guys are top 15. But I think based on public perception and reputation, this is probably the least hyped match between the four of them. So, yeah, I guess you're saving the worst for last, so to speak, but it should be competitive. Look at the actual odds here. Ruud is a decent favorite by no surprise, as Ruud is around minus 325. Humbert is around plus 270. As for the actual game spread, Ruud minus 4, Humbert plus 4. As for the over-under, 21.5. For the set wagering, Ruud minus 1.5 sets is minus 115. Humbert to win a set is minus 115. Over 2.5 sets is plus 155. So I understand Humbert has been involved in a couple of marathons in this event, as he ended up going to 3 sets against Sonego in the Thursday match, and he ended up beating Zhang comfortably, but he had to go to 3 sets against Coria in the first round. So he has been involved in a couple of marathons. Ruud has not. Ruud had a bye, then beat Tabilo and Hurkacz by the exact same total score line. One of them was Bizarro. He won 1-6-2, 6-4. He won the other one 6-4, 6-2. So same idea. Won by a spread of 6 in both matches. But I do think Humbert can keep this interesting. To go through the head-to-head, it is a bit dated. I'll admit it. Humbert's 3-1 in the head-to-head, and he even won the only clay meeting that they had between them. So I do think that Humbert can give Ruud some problems. Ruud was pretty fortunate that Hurkacz was not exactly a great clay player, be potentially exhausted because he was playing after winning a Estoril and then he went straight into Monte-Carlo. It just seemed like Hurkacz was gassed, and Ruud looked comfortable, but I do think Humbert can prolong some rallies. He's a lefty, so it's kind of a unique opponent to face. And apparently the lefty angle's given Ruud problems in the past. So I think for the sake of this matchup, I am going to lean to the over. I think it's going to be a close match. I would lean to Humbert plus the games. I think Ruud might win this just based on potential fatigue from Humbert in the latter stages. But I do think that this total's too short at around 21, 21.5. And I do think the over 2.5 sets at plus 155 is a good value play since all 4 meetings in the head-to-head have gone to a deciding set, or I should say they have involved each player splitting the first 2 sets. So with that being the case, I'm going to lean to the over, and I am going to lean to Humbert to keep this match competitive. Anyway, that's going to do it for the actual preview of the 4 matches. Now it's time for the lock and dog pick. Starting off with the lock, I'm going to go back to the first matchup between Tsitsipas and Khachanov. I am going to go with Tsitsipas minus the 1.5 games at minus 145. Looking at the overall form of Tsitsipas, he beat Etcheverry in 12 straight games. Dropped the first game and then won 12 straight against a good clay player. Etcheverry's a solid clay player. And then he ended up beating Zverev in what could have been 7-5, 6-0. So the point of Tsitsipas was completely dialed in for about the first 70 minutes. Then things kind of went haywire. But I do think in the midst of that choke job, maybe that helped Tsitsipas's confidence because he was able to blow that massive of a lead and not totally fall apart. I do like the fact that he was able to reset and the fact that he was able to still salvage the set despite blowing a 5-0 lead. So I actually like what I saw with regard to him dealing with adversity, which has been an issue for Tsitsipas in the last couple of years, pretty much his entire career. But I do think him dominating dominating Zverev, on clay is very impressive. And I think because of that, he's in better form than Khachanov. And I already mentioned it. He's 7-2 in the head-to-head. It's tough to pick against him in this head-to-head matchup because Khachanov has really never fared well. And I do think that Tsitsipas has looked more comfortable on this actual court. And with that being the case, give me Tsitsipas to win, maybe in straight sets. But I am going to go with the minus 1.5 games here at minus 145 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to the last matchup between Humbert and Ruud. Give me the over 2.5 sets at plus 155. Humbert has gone to a deciding set in 3 of his last 4 matches. He's not afraid of getting himself into marathons, and I do think Ruud, we know, can kind of unravel at times with the unforced errors if his opponent is patient enough, and I do think Humbert is. And the lefty serve can maybe be difficult for Ruud to deal with since he stands so far back on the court. If Humbert can hit the slice serve out wide and force Ruud off the court, maybe sprinkles in some serve and volley. Who knows? But I do think that Humbert can keep this match competitive. And I mentioned this before. They have split the first 2 sets in each of the 4 head-to-head meetings, including the lone clay meeting back in 2020. So with that being the case, I just think the value is there at 155. And for that reason, I am going to go with that as my dog. So once again, my picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Tsitsipas, minus 1.5 games at minus 145 against Khachanov. And my dog will be on Humbert and Ruud over 2.5 sets at plus 155. A reminder, we'll be back once again to get into the semifinals of Monte-Carlo in the next episode. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Find me on the NFL show. WNBA show is starting back up in a month or so stay tuned for that. Until next time, though, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.